Oh, the first time Nora Vance told me she hated my guts, we were standing in the break room at 7:43 in the morning, and I hadn't even had my coffee yet. Old. She didn't say it like that, obviously. She said, "Your presentation deck from last quarter used the wrong brand font, and I had to fix it before it went to the client." Then she poured her tea, looked me dead in the eye, and walked out, holding an empty mug, thinking, "Who is this woman?" 14 months ago, I was 3 weeks into my new role as a senior account strategist at Meridian Creative, a mid-sized agency in downtown Toronto that did brand consulting for retail and consumer goods companies. I'd come over from a smaller shop in Kitchener, genuinely excited, genuinely green. Nora had been at Meridian for 4 years. While she ran the client success side of things, which meant every piece of work I produced eventually landed on her desk before it went anywhere near a client, and she had opinions about everything. The font thing was just the beginning. By month 2, I knew her schedule better than my own. Not because I was interested, because I was actively trying to avoid her. If Nora was in the kitchen, I went to the vending machine on the 3rd floor. If she was leading the Friday debrief, I made sure I had something ready to present so she couldn't pick apart my silence. Walked into a meeting room where I was already sitting. There was this specific way she'd set down her laptop, a kind of controlled thud that told me exactly what she thought about sharing a table with me. Of this, but at some point I started thinking of her as the obstacle, not a colleague, not even a rival. Just this thing I had to get around to do my actual job. Old friend and coworker Brett thought it was hilarious. "She doesn't do this with anyone else," he told me once, over beers at a place on King Street after work. Like she's pretty normal with everyone else. Whatever you did, man. Normal. I didn't do anything. Well, you took the Patterson account from her. Well, I didn't take it. It was assigned to me. Well, shrugged in that way, that meant sure, technically. The Patterson account was a mid-sized sportswear brand out of Vancouver, and from what I understood, Nora had been lobbying for it for months before I arrived. Then I showed up, and our director, a guy named Owen, handed it to me because he wanted fresh eyes. Nora never said a word about it, directly. She didn't have to. The font thing happened the next week. Or, that was the shape of things between us. 14 months of careful avoidance, loaded silences, and the occasional professional exchange that felt like diffusing a bomb with good manners. Then came the Callaway pitch. Callaway was a national home goods retailer, the kind of account that doesn't come along often. They were looking for a new brand partner ahead of a big fall campaign, and Meridian had made the shortlist. Owen called Nora and me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon and told us we'd be presenting together. Joint pitch. He wanted strategy and client success in the same room, telling a unified story. I remember watching Nora's face during that meeting. She didn't react. Not visibly. She just nodded, wrote something in her notebook, and said, "When do we fly out?" "We're going to Calgary." The Callaway head office was there, and they wanted an in-person presentation. Owen booked us on a Thursday morning flight out of Pearson. I barely slept the night before. Not because of Nora, because of the pitch. This was the kind of account that changes what your job looks like. Callaway had locations in every province, a national media budget, the works. I'd spent 2 weeks building out the strategy deck, and I thought it was good. I genuinely thought it was good. All thought otherwise. Told me this in the Uber to the airport at 6:15 in the morning, with the kind of calm that is somehow more cutting than anger. The competitive positioning section reads like it was written for a Vancouver boutique, not a national chain. Callaway operates in markets with completely different consumer behaviors. Saskatchewan is not the same as Quebec. "Well, I know that," I said. Or, then the deck should reflect that. All regional callouts on slide 11. Bullet points isn't a regional strategy. Looked out the window at the highway in the dark and said nothing. Or, we went through security separately. I don't know if that was intentional on her part or just how it worked out. I found a seat near our gate, got a coffee, and tried to focus on the deck on my laptop. She sat 4 rows away and did the same. We boarded without speaking. Horribly plain, we were seated next to each other because of course we were. Middle and window. I had the middle. For 2.5 hours, Nora read through her portion of the presentation on her tablet and made notes in the margins with a stylus, and I revised slide 11 into something that actually deserved to be called a regional strategy. We didn't talk. It wasn't hostile. It was just practiced. For 2 people who had gotten very good at existing in the same space without acknowledging each other. Landed in Calgary just after 10. The Callaway office was in the northeast, out near the ring road, so we grabbed a cab. The driver had the radio on, some country station, and the sky outside was that specific kind of Alberta blue that you only get in October, big and cold and completely indifferent. I remember thinking it looked like the kind of sky that doesn't care what happens under it. The pitch was at 1 o'clock. We had time to kill, so we checked into the hotel, a downtown property that Owen's assistant had booked, dropped our bags, and agreed to meet in the lobby at noon to go over the presentation one more time. I was in the lobby at 11:55. Nora came down at 11:58. We found a quiet corner near the windows and went through the deck slide by slide. And something shifted slightly in how we talked. Maybe it was being away from the office. Maybe it was the pressure. But we actually talked about the narrative arc, about which client question we were most likely to get, about whether to lead with the data or the creative concept. She had thoughts. Real ones, not correction. At one point, she said, "I think your instinct on the emotional hook is right. The data can support it, it doesn't need to lead it." And I said, "That's what I was thinking." And she looked at me for a second like that was slightly surprising to her. Holloway office was a 40-minute cab ride. We presented for about 90 minutes, fielded questions, shook hands. I thought it went well. Nora, on the way out, said, "Not bad." Which I was starting to understand was the equivalent of a standing ovation. Holes where things went sideways. What we'd ordered didn't show. Driver canceled, something about a dispatch error. We were standing outside the Callaway building at 4:30 in the afternoon, in October, in Calgary, with the temperature dropping fast and a rebooking wait time of 45 minutes. Nora pulled up transit and figured out there was a C train stop about 8 minutes walk away that could get us back toward downtown. So we walked. Train was fine, downtown was fine. We got back to the hotel just after 6, and Nora said she wanted to freshen up before dinner. Owen had made a reservation for us at a restaurant near Stephen Avenue, one of those expense account places with the good Alberta beef, and we were supposed to be there at 7. Hold the elevator first. Pressed the button. The doors opened. I stepped in, and Nora came around the corner, just in time to slip through before they closed. Or was one of those older ones, a bit slow wood paneling inside. I pressed 6, she pressed 7, the doors closed. We made it to the second floor. Then it stopped. Stop. Like a shudder, a kind of mechanical hesitation, and then nothing. The light stayed on, but the elevator wasn't moving. I pressed 6 again. Nothing. I pressed the door open button. Nothing. Nora pressed the lobby button. Nothing. I found the emergency call button, pressed it, and after about 15 seconds, a recorded message told us someone would be with us shortly, and to remain calm. There was something almost funny about being told to remain calm by a recording. We looked at each other. Old building, Nora said. Yeah. Old. Could be a while. Way. Yeah. Old. She leaned against the back wall. I leaned against the side. The elevator was maybe 4 feet wide. There wasn't a way to stand in it and be far from the other person. About 2 minutes, neither of us said anything. I checked my phone. Service was fine, 2 bars. I texted the restaurant to let them know we might be late. Nora was doing something on her phone too. Without looking up. You know what's funny? What? Olave. I've been in this industry for 6 years and I've never actually been stuck in an elevator. That's not that funny. No. I meant, she paused. I meant it's funny the things you think about when you can't go anywhere. Fed, I waited. Phone in her pocket, looked at the ceiling for a second, then at me. I owe you an apology about the Patterson account. I didn't say anything. I know it wasn't your call. You didn't ask for it. I'd been working toward it for a long time, and then someone I didn't know walked in and it went to him, and I took it out on you in ways that weren't fair. Hummed faintly, doing nothing but humming. Font thing, I said. Smiled. The font thing. You weren't wrong about the font. No, but that's not why I said it. Slowly. I figured that out around month 2. And you just kept showing up. I needed the job. It was a real laugh, short and surprised, and it did something to the air in that small space. Made it feel slightly less like a standoff. Waiting for you to quit, she said. Honestly, a lot of people would have. I thought about it. After the Hendricks meeting. After the Hendricks meeting. That was a month in. I'd presented a campaign concept and she dismantled it in front of 3 other people. Not cruelly, but thoroughly. Every assumption, every gap in the logic. She was right about most of it. That hadn't made it easier. "Oh," she said again. Simpler this time. Just the 2 words. "Warren, it's okay." "Oh, really? But thank you for saying it." Oh, I shifted my weight. My back was starting to feel the wall. "Can I ask you something?" "Ort, sure." Although our first week. Before the Patterson thing. The font thing. You looked at me like you'd already decided something. Quiet for a moment. "Owen told me about you before you started. Said you were sharp. Said he was excited. He used the phrase, shake things up." She paused. "I'd been trying to shake things up for 2 years. Well, yeah, I get that. Well, I didn't handle it well. Of course. No, but I probably could have tried harder to understand it." Looked at me for a long moment. The elevator was still doing nothing. Outside, through some gap in the mechanics, I could hear the very distant sound of the hotel, a door somewhere, muffled voices. It felt like we were in a pocket of the world that had been put on hold. "All today," she said. "The emotional hook thing. It landed. The regional strategy helped. Old. That was a collaboration. Was. Old. Not the almost smile from earlier. A real one." It changed her face in a way that I registered somewhere in my chest without entirely knowing what to do with it. Oral. Here's the thing I hadn't let myself think about in 14 months. Nora was brilliant. I knew that from week 1. You don't fight with someone for that long without respecting what they can do. But I'd been so focused on the obstacle that I'd put a wall up around everything else, and standing there, 4 feet apart in a stopped elevator in Calgary, I was suddenly very aware of how thin that wall actually was. What was the one who broke the silence? "For what it's worth," she said. "I've been wanting to say something like this for a while. It's easier here. Old, because I can't leave. Old, because there's nothing else to manage." Or jolted. Both of us grabbed the nearest wall. She grabbed the railing. I grabbed the control panel, and then it started moving again. Just like that. Like nothing had happened. The doors opened on the second floor, where a maintenance guy was standing with a sheepish expression and a radio, apologizing about a relay issue in the mechanical room. Pulled out, took the stairs. We didn't talk much on the way up to our floors, but it was a different kind of quiet than the one from the plane. When we got to the 6th-floor landing, she stopped and said, "I'll meet you in the lobby in 20 minutes. Don't let them give away our table." "Oh, I won't." Ole. She pushed through the stairwell door, and I stood there for a second before going up to 7. Was different. Not awkward, not overly careful, just different. We talked about the pitch, and then about the city, and then about something she'd said in the cab about growing up in Halifax. I told her about Kitchener. She told me about a job offer she'd turned down in Vancouver 2 years ago. I told her I'd almost gone to Montreal before Toronto. We ordered the same thing without noticing until the server pointed it out. At one point, between the main and dessert, she said, "I really didn't think we'd ever actually have a normal conversation." "Normal," I said. "Normal was back in Toronto." "Ole, you think it'll go back to that?" Well, I looked at her. The restaurant was warm, a little loud light in the way of places that have been open long enough to get the lighting right. "I don't think so," I said. "Do you?" Well, head slowly. "No, I don't." Home on Friday morning. Same flight, different seats this time. She was in 14A, I was in 22C. But when we landed at Pearson and were waiting at the luggage carousel, she found me in the crowd and stood next to me. And when my bag came, she grabbed it off the belt before I could, because hers had already come and I hadn't noticed. "Oh, thank you," I said. "Well, read into it," she said, but she was smiling. Well, on Monday, nothing changed all at once. She still had opinions about my work. I still thought some of hers were overcomplicated. But there was a difference in the temperature of it now. The controlled thud of the laptop on the table was slightly less of a thud. She stopped and asked me how my weekend was on Tuesday morning, and I stopped and actually answered instead of giving the one-syllable version. Brett noticed within about 3 days. Well, he didn't say anything. Just gave me a look in the hallway that communicated everything. 2 weeks after Calgary, Owen called us into his office to say we'd gotten the Callaway account. Or and I were both in the chairs across from his desk. Owen said they specifically mentioned the cohesion of the presentation, said it felt like one team with one vision. He was looking at both of us. "Whatever you two did, keep doing it." Nora looked over at me. "Old Otter." I looked at her. "Oh, will," she said. Well, after the meeting, we walked out to the hallway together and I said, "One team with one vision. Ole, don't let it go to your head." Old, it's a little bit going to my head. Walked toward her desk, and about halfway down the hall she glanced back. Not for a reason, just a glance. Won't know what happens from here. I'm not going to pretend I've figured it out, or that there's some obvious next move. What I know is that 14 months of friction turned into something else in an elevator in Calgary. And you can't exactly put that back the way it was. We still disagree about half the things we disagreed about before. She still thinks my timelines are optimistic. I still think her client recaps are longer than they need to be. Well, last Thursday, she left a coffee on my desk. Black, which is how I take it, with a post-it that said slide 11 was good today, and I sat there for a minute looking at it before I drank it. There's something in that. I don't know what to call it yet, but there's something in it. There's a version of that Calgary trip where I stay bitter, where I get off the elevator, go to dinner, eat my steak, fly home, and nothing changes. I've thought about that version a lot lately, because it was so close to being the one that actually happened. What stopped it wasn't luck. It was a choice Nora made, to say the hard thing out loud when she didn't have to. She could have kept the apology inside for another 14 months. Nobody would have known. I wouldn't have pushed for it, but she said it anyway, in a stopped elevator with nowhere to go, and that took something real. That took the kind of honesty that most people talk about valuing but quietly avoid when it actually costs them something. About that a lot, the gap between knowing the right thing and doing it. I knew for months that the tension between us was partly my problem too. I could have tried harder to understand why she reacted the way she did to the Patterson account. I had enough information. I just didn't want to use it, because being the wronged party was easier than being the person who extends the first hand. That's not a flattering thing to admit, but it's true. What I've taken from this, the thing I keep coming back to, is that the situations that feel most stuck are usually stuck because someone has to go first. In the elevator, it was Nora. At dinner, I matched it. On the plane home, she grabbed my bag off the carousel. These weren't grand gestures. They were small, considered choices that each one of us made to treat the other person as worth the effort. And they compounded. That's how things actually change. Not in one dramatic moment, but in a series of small decisions that each require a little courage and a little willingness to be wrong. All the way pitch worked because we stopped performing for each other and started actually thinking together. That's not something you can fake in a room with experienced clients. Owen said it felt like one team with one vision, and he wasn't wrong, but what he didn't see was the 2 weeks of friction it took to get there. The argument in the Uber, the silent plane ride, the revised slide 11. We both brought to that pitch was only useful because we'd finally stopped using it against each other. To pretend I have this all figured out now, Nora and I still disagree. Probably always will. But there's a difference between conflict that tears things down and conflict that actually builds something. And the difference is whether both people are willing to stay in the room, literally or otherwise, long enough to find out what's on the other side of the hard conversation. Coffee cup with a post-it on your desk isn't a love story, but it's a start, and I've learned that starts are worth paying attention to because most of us walk past them every day without noticing.